Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susanna, for the introduction. Hi, I'm Guilherme. I'm a PhD student from Brazil. Thank you, TCD, and thank you for the organization for the opportunity to share with you my research. Feel free to make any comment or suggestions. I'm here to learn from you, and that's it. The title of my presentation is Hydropower Development, Governance, and Social Environmental Conflicts in the Amazon, a case study of fisheries in the Madeira River. This is the agenda of my presentation. I'll briefly present an introduction, the objectives of my research, some concepts, the methodology, and focus on the preliminary results, and at the end, the final considerations and the next steps of my research. So for the introduction, we are going to the Amazon Basin. The Amazon Basin is considered Brazil's next frontier for hydropower, especially since the 2010s decade. As we can see here in this image provided by Ataide et al. 2019, there are lots of hydropower projects in the Amazon Basin, planned, inventoried, and also in operation. Hydropower is an important source of energy in Brazil, but it's also very controversial because hydropower produce large, big amounts of impacts, especially in local and regional levels. One of the focus of the hydropower development in the Amazon is the Madeira River. Madeira River is an Amazon River tributary and is considered one of the world's greatest river, and its drainage covers parts of Brazil, Bolivia, and Peru, as shown by this image. Here are some beautiful pictures of the Madeira River that I took when I was doing my fieldwork. And Madeira River received, during the 2010s decade, the Santo Antônio and Jirau hydropower dams. They are located here in the Madeira River, next to Porto Velho, the capital of the state of Rondônia. The initial plan was to build just one single dam, the Santo Antônio Dam, but because of issues of the possibility of flooding the Bolivian territory, the Brazilian government decided to split the project into Santo Antônio and Jirau dams because they are like big, large infrastructure project. It is required this environmental impact assessment process to analyze the impact of the project. So the environmental impact assessment process is started together for both projects. So the viability and the environmental impact studies occurred simultaneously for both projects. And here is a brief timeline of the environmental impact assessment process of these projects. So in 2003, we have the presentation of the preliminary studies. The proponent, it was the government, presented the preliminary studies to the federal environmental agency, IBAMA. In 2004, IBAMA issued the term of reference. The term of reference is like a checklist. You have to check all the elements in your environmental impact study. In 2005, the proponent presented the environmental impact study to the environmental agents, and there were some elements of the term of reference that were not covered by the environmental impact study. Anyways, the process moved on, and then in 2006, the environmental agents analyzed the documents, called for public hearings, and here in 2007, IBAMA issued this technical report attesting inviability of the projects, deny the preliminary license of both projects. So something very interesting and crazy happened here. So in the broader context, in the government, the Ministry of Environment, and also in the environmental agents, the national environmental agents, suffered some change in personnel, and after this change, the preliminary license for both projects were issued, and after that, we have like all the license process approved, even moving with some conflicts around the environmental impact assessment process and the environmental licensing process. And this is what we can see of this in this environmental impact assessment process. It was based in hierarchy, concentration of power and authority over decision making. It's important here to highlight that the power of decision making in the environmental impact assessment process is concentrated in the environmental agents' hands. So it's up to the environmental agents to decide if the process will be accepted or denied. So it's really concentrated, and there's a lack of flexibility along this process. So this is what Paul Otteniper called a centralized governance structure. And this centralized governance structure presents low performance in addressing emerging socio-ecological challenges, such as social environmental conflicts. And this is what I'm going to look in my research. So my research question is how social environmental conflicts have emerged during the environmental impact assessment process, and how the environmental impact assessment process has considered these conflicts. My hypothesis is conflicts have intensified throughout the environmental impact assessment process because of this centralized governance model that is like incapable of incorporating the stakeholders' perceptions in impact analysis and mitigation action management. The main objective of my research is to analyze how the environmental impact assessment governance is related to social environmental conflicts that emerge in territories affected by hydropower dams, focusing here in the perspective of socio-ecological system governance. And here are some of my specific objectives to identify and describe the socio-ecological governance regime prior to the hydropower plants and the environmental impact assessment governance, to analyze how the environmental impact assessment governance consider and or alter the pre-existent socio-ecological governance regime, highlighting the conflicts. I'll present for you some preliminary results of these specific objectives. It's also important to highlight that this is a working process, so feel free to make any comment, and that's it. So for everyone like be on the same page, I'll present some concepts. Well, the environmental impact assessment process is what I just said to you, is the process of identifying the future consequence of a current or proposed action, usually a project, infrastructure project, engineering project. The environmental impact assessment literature says that this process must be based on participative governance, social involvement, communication and transparency, and technical, scientific, and traditional knowledge talking to each other. But what we have in reality is a simulation of participatory events, manipulation, exclusion, and social marginalization, especially of communities that are already marginalized, and traditional knowledge is usually ignored. And from this context, we usually have the emergence of social environmental conflicts that we considered a social environmental conflict when opposing groups encounter barriers to meeting their objectives and needs, and they are very common in the context of big infrastructure projects. When the environmental impact assessment literature address the social environmental conflicts concept, is always related to this procedural gaps. But what I want to do in my dissertation is to look at the social environmental conflicts using the institutional networks and socio-ecological configuration perspectives, and to look at this and see how the environmental impact assessment is addressing these institutional networks and socio-ecological configuration relating to the social-environmental conflicts. And how I'm going to do this, I'm using the socio-ecological system approach. A socio-ecological system is a system comprising the inherent connection between an ecological system and one or more socio-cultural and economic system. This is a representation of a socio-ecological system from Ostrom. She said the socio-ecological system can be based on 4 main subsystems: the resource unity, resource system, governance system, and user. They are all connected and interacting with each other, producing outcomes. And this socio-ecological system is influenced by broader socio-economic and political settings. And how I'm looking for social networks and also for the socio-ecological configuration. So I will focus on the governance system. And here, the governance system in my research is an ensemble of institutions and procedures that shape, determine, and review user attitudes within the system. But it's also important to understand the other subsystem to address the governance structure once they are all connected and interacting with each other. So my method, I will present for you my qualitative methods for now. So for data collection, I'm using documentary analysis. So I took all the scientific papers, academic books, the documents from environmental impact assessment and environmental license process, public hearings, minutes, basic environmental plans, social environmental programs, and technical reports. I'm analyzing these using categories from both environmental impact assessment literature and also socio-ecological system literature. And also, I applied semi-structured interviews. My interview script had 4 guiding questions, and these questions went through 4 sessions of validation with different researchers. I have 2 different scripts, but they are all looking for the same information. But there are 2 different interview scripts, one for the users, the fishermen and middlemen, and I'll explain, and also one other for the managers. The idea of this data collection is to describe the governance structures, both from the socio-ecological system and the environmental impact assessment, and highlight the conflicts in this context. For data analysis, I'm using content analysis from Bardan. It's like several stages to have your result. I'm here approximately like from here to here in this part, the blue part. And also highlighting this is a working process, so I'll present some preliminary results. So here are some of my results. I applied 40 interviews. Each one of them took like 40 minutes to collect the data. And my idea of this interview, of conducting interview, is to assess the main stakeholders present in the governance structure of the fisheries in Madeira River. So I applied interviews with professional fishermen, recreational fishermen, middlemen. Middleman here is the person who goes to the community, buy the fish, and then go to the market and sell the fish to the merchants. So the merchants, the environmental agents representatives, and also NGOs and social movements representatives. I visited these locations, Guajará-Mirim and Porto Velho. They are the main cities. Porto Velho is the capital of the state of Rondônia, where the dams are built. And Guajará-Mirim is a city in the border, in the frontier between Brazil and Bolivia, and there's a new dam planned for this location. In Guajará-Mirim, I only had the opportunity to participate in a public hearing about this new planned dam, the binational dam. But in Porto Velho, I could not apply interviews in Guajará-Mirim by now. And in Porto Velho, I applied interviews with environmental agents representatives and NGOs and social movements representatives. And these are the communities that I visit. Jaci Paraná and Vila Nova do Teotônio, they are between Jirau and Santo Antônio dams. And São Carlos do Jamari e Cujubim, they are downstream Santo Antônio. Here is the location of the communities. Here's Santo Antônio, Cujubim and São Carlos, downstream Santo Antônio, Jaci Paraná e Cachoeiras do Teotônio, between Santo Antônio and Jirau. This is a gap of my research that I could not apply interviews upstream Jirau, but it's part of my next step. So I would like to go to a new fieldwork this summer to apply interviews in this upper part, because it's important, especially because after the dams, some new association of fishermen arise, like upstream Jirau. So I will present some results of my first specific objective, that is identify and describe the socio-ecological governance regime prior to the hydropower plants. This is my favorite part. So this is a representation of the governance structure of the fisheries in Madeira River. It's adapted from Doria et al. 2021. And here are some of the stakeholders. We have here the government. The government is represented by the federal government and the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Mines and Energy. The federal government, like per se. We have coming back to the government. We also have the state level government. Here is represented by Rondônia, state level, and we also have the municipality representation in this government, the municipality government. And we also have these cross countries representations, because some of the impacts of the dams were crossing the frontiers. We also have environmental agents in different levels. IBAMA is here represented, representing the federal environmental agents. We also have the state environmental agents here, is represented by SEDAM, is the Department of Environmental Development of the state of Rondônia. And we also have the municipality environmental agents, is the Agriculture Department, is responsible for the fish production. We have here the environmental policy, is responsible for the enforcement. We have here, these are non-government stakeholders in the fisheries governance, the anti-dam movement, MAB, Movimento dos Atingidos por Barragens, lots of NGOs from the broader level to the local level, and researchers here represented mainly by the Federal University of Rondônia researchers. With the users, we have the professional fishermen, and the professional fishermen, they are the fishermen in the communities that like fish to live, and the recreational fishermen, they go to the river, fish, take a picture, and then the fish go back to the river. There's this fishers colony in the municipal level. In the municipality level, the fishers colony is responsible for the fishing license, and also for the taxes. So it's like sort of organization that brings together the professional fishermen, but actually they are responsible for taxes and license issues for fishing. And the middleman is the person who goes to the community, buy the fish, and then sell it to the in the market. Now we have that fisheries governance like in a broader level. So now I would like to present you some local level governance. Is mainly based on informal arrangements. So I'll present you three main examples that I could notice in the field work about these informal arrangements. The first one is Cachoeira do Teutônio. Cachoeira means waterfall. So it is a community. It has like two sides, one side of the river, and the right side of the river is Vila do Teutônio, and the left side is Vila Amazonas. They used to fish migratory catfish, and they had very specific fishing structures that I will present you. This is one of the fishing structures. It's called burra. Like they are wood structures, and the fisherman goes here to fish, and they use this. I don't know how to say. It's called fisga. It's something like an harpoon. You go spear. I don't know. And the fish. Well, this is a waterfall, so there was certain time of the year the fish were going up, so it was easy for them to fish because the fish are like jumping the waterfall. So they go there, use this equipment to fish and pull it back. There's also this, it's called covey. This is fish trap. The fish goes here and it cannot go back. So it's interesting because this equipment brings together all the community to build this equipment. So this was very interesting. They use this too in some fishing spots. It's called tarrafa. It is like cast nets, I think. So they go to some place here and they used to where the water is the stand water, they throw the tarrafa and they catch the fish and pull it back. This is the location of the community. It was located right in the side of the river, like the riverside. But after the construction of the dams, it moved to a new place. It's like a little bit far away from where it was. The community was resettled, both sides. And for this fishing structure, they used to have before the construction of the dams these informal agreements and this term system. This is what one fisherman told me how they went fishing at that time. So you have this line, you go there, you throw your nets, and after you throw your net, you have like 10 or 20 minutes, and after that, you go back to the end of the line. And this is like to guarantee that everyone has the opportunity to fish and to guarantee the sustainability of the system. And there's also this paredão. Paredão is like a big wall. It's a fishing spot and it's controlled by the water level. So they go there, they have like some rules to access the paredão, the big wall. And when the water goes up, they have to go back to the community. Another example is São Carlos do Jamari. São Carlos is downstream Santo Antônio Dam. It is located in between Madeira River and Jamari River. Here we can see the different colors, Madeira River and Jamari River. It's located really close to protected area called Extractive Reserve Lago do Cunhã. It's like a big lake. The main activities before the dams in these communities were fishing, agriculture, extractivism, and mining, but the main activity was fishing. And they also had this turn system and rules for access fishing locations. And this is what one fisherman told me. Instead of these nets, like the fishing spots, they used to go using channels. I don't know how to say this. And they go to the river, do the line, you throw, and after your turn, you go back to the end of the line. Another example is Jaci Paraná is a community between Jirau and Santo Antônio Dam. Jaci Paraná community is located between Jaci Paraná and Madeira River. It's also close to the extractive reserve Jaci Paraná protected area. They were resettled, and well, actually they are being resettled like for a long time because the dam is making the water up every year, like couple of years, and they did not have those structured those fishing rules exactly like the turn rules or the rotation, but they have like some rules for the fishing spots that, well, if there's space over there, you could put your net there, but you could not put your net on the top of mine. So there were like these conversations, and they agreed in some points to fish. And this is what we have, like from these examples, we can see some sort of like in the community level, some sort of self-organization and shared decision-making process. And in this community level, we can call this organization, this governance structure as polycentric governance, as Paul Wolseniper and also Ostrom said. This is like a governance structure is not totally decentralized. There's some sort of coordination and organization, but multiple centers of decision making. And how this, the author said that polycentric governance is a good strategy to deal with social ecological challenges such as social environmental conflicts. So what we can see here, based on the networks and the institution, before the construction of the dams, the community said, the fishermen just said, there has never been friction like this. There were never like, they did not have conflicts. They respect each other. There was no such a thing. There was no fighting. So, of course, we have here some nostalgic feeling because it was before the dam. So I'm going to analyze this deeply, but this is like some source of the conflicts in a polycentric governance structure. Well, like mostly polycentric governance structure could be managed. So from this context, but then the hydropower dams came, and I think you can imagine what happened. So our presenter now, the second specific objective, that is to analyze how the environmental impact assessment governance considered or altered the socio-ecological governance regime, highlighting the conflicts. So what I have here, first, I'll present you the main impacts. There were a lot of impacts over the social and environmental context. And I will highlight here the perception of the fishermen. For them, the main impact was the decreasing in fishing. So they used to say like fishing has decreased a lot. Before the dam, they used to sell a lot of fish, but now they cannot sell because there's no more fish. The little we catch stays in the community while they do not sell the fish in the big markets, in the capital markets. And there's this question that with the dams, the fish can like cross the barrier. So, or they are in the downstream the dam, like concentrated here, or they are up in the upstream dam, like in the reservoir. So there were some compensation measures for this impact of the dams on the fishing availability, but the compensation was essentially creating fish tanks. But well, we have fishermen; they are specialized in fishing, not creating fish, so it kind of didn't work. And there was also financial compensation. But this is like another problem. In terms of governance, here we have the participatory process of the environmental impact assessment. Well, the fishermen said there were a lot of meetings in the beginning, but after the construction of the dam, everyone has disappeared. So in terms of participatory process, well, there was, yes, a participatory process, but how effective it was, we can discuss this. And a lot of like fishermen also said about cooptation, like many leaderships in the fishermen communities were coopted by this idea of employment, economic development, and this also changed the governance structure because you have a leader, he's like defending his position, and now he's like on the side of the dam. So this also changed the governance structure. And downstream, those communities downstream to Santo Antonio, they were not consulted because they were not considered impacted. They were not considered like in the area of the impacted area of both dams. But after that, after the construction of the dams, we have like some events that really impacted the downstream communities. In terms of fishing arrangements, that those beautiful arrangements that I told you before, they said there are no more rules. Everyone's just chasing after their own thing. And they are also going to the lakes, and there's no turn system in the lake. So also here we have the construction of the dam, the environmental impact assessment did not consider the fishing arrangements. So there's no more fishing arrangements in these community levels. In terms of conflicts, well, I will present you the conflicts in the perspective of the professional fishermen. So they said that now they have conflicts with recreational fishers. Here, they said from the power plant onwards, well, the fishermen, like the number of recreational fishermen, increased a lot. I don't know exactly how to explain why the number of recreational fishermen increased in this moment, but I have an hypothesis. Like 2010s, probably those television programs about fishing, like in Discovery Channel, start to grow in Brazil, and I think they started to organize themselves like in this sport fishing. And they are disputing the same resource. The recreational fishermen, they say that the professional fishermen, are is the cause of the reduction of fish availability. So the idea of the recreational fishermen is to put an end to the professional fishermen. So that's why we have like a conflict here. They are the recreational fishing. Well, as I said, they are dislegitimizing the professional fishing, and there's also this fishing license issues. Like when the environmental impact assessment says that the professional fishermen will be compensated, lots of people are went to the fishers colony to get a fisher's license, so they can also have the compensation, like the financial compensation. So what the professional fishermen say here is there are a lot of fishermen, but they are not actually fishermen. They just have the license to get the compensation. In terms of environmental authorities, well, the fishermen also said there's this increasement enforcement with the installation of the dam and the creation of the reservoir. There's this risk area that is not possible to fish there because like it's prohibited. But this risk area is also full of fish, so they may like want to go there, but it's like also very risky, so they do not go there. And they also said the environmental authorities are now confiscating the equipment, and this is like they are very violent in this process. And at the end, we have here the farmers and landowners conflicts with the fishermen. Now we have like less fishing spots, so the fishermen have to like need to go further, like need to have this need for greater travel distance for fishing, and they are going to private areas. And in these private areas, those guys they are not allowing fishing there. We can go anymore, and they are all armed, so it's like very violent. And there's also this question that some fishermen are going to protected areas, so is also prohibited, but there is no more space for fishing, like where they used to fish. Here is like some summary. Well, we have how we can see the relationship between environmental impact assessment, conflicts, and governance. So in this experience, we have the environmental impact assessment could not address the complexity, the unpredictable results and interactions from like the stakeholders and this like change in the socio-ecological system. The institutions and networks, especially in small communities, they were not considered. There are gaps in the process, so like such as low participation and inappropriate compensations. And there's also this change in power relationships when we look at the local level. Well, the fishermen, they don't have power anymore to define their own fishing arrangements. And this is because also because of the biophysical impact of the dams, but also how the environmental impact assessment was conducted. Here are some final considerations, like for this part of research. The environmental impact assessment transformed the governance structures from decentralized perspective. It did not consider the polycentric governance in the small communities. The conflicts were not addressed, and they can be intensified by these failures in the environmental impact assessment process, coupled with disregarding institutional arrangements. The environmental impact assessment did not address the perspectives of the stakeholders, and the main idea of this research is there is a need to broaden the governance scope of environmental impact assessment. Like in the direction of a policy-centric governance in the environmental impact assessment to consider stakeholders' perspectives and also address the complexity of socio-ecological systems. My next steps, well, next summer, I intend to do the second part of my field work to visit those communities upstream Giral and also apply interviews. I will also analyze the interviews with managers and the other users that I did not finish to analyze. I would like to address this discussion on resilience and polycentric governance too in my dissertation. I'll bring the results to the participants of the research, both for validation and also for this feedback. Well, they are contributing to the research, so I think they must have the results, well, what they contributed. Here are some my reference, and I would like to acknowledge the School of Arts, Science, and Humanities of the University of São Paulo, the Center for Latin American Studies, TCD. Plangeia is my research group for Brazil, the agents FAPESP and CAPS, Federal University of Rondônia, that helped me a lot during my fieldwork. This research group in the Federal University of Rondônia, SEXA, and the Ichthyology and Fishing Laboratory. I'd like to acknowledge my committee, Dr. Ivan Moreto, Dr. Robert Bushbecker, Dr. Carolina Doria, and Dr. Diana Clavijo, and Dr. Mariluz Pais that helped me a lot in my fieldwork, and also the undergrad students and grad students from the biology course from Federal University of Rondônia that also, well, they were like my connection to my interview. So without them, I couldn't do anything. And that's it.